12 years ago, I wrote a book about populist conservatism in my home state of Kansas. And I had a phrase in that book that I was proud of, where I said that in Kansas, the gravity of discontent pulls to the right, and to the right, and further to the right. The gravity of discontent. And when I wrote that, I was trying to describe an aberration. Like, look at this weird thing going on out here in the heart of darkness, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, it's very sunny, it's a beautiful place, I love it, right? I'm just sort of kidding about that. But that was the idea there. This is a crazy thing that's going on in this corner of America. Today, folks, the gravity of discontent works that way everywhere you go. Everywhere in this country. Everywhere you go in the Western world, people are lining up with Marine Le Pen or Geert Wilders or whoever the hell it is. This is happening all over the place. Why does it work that way? Why does the gravity of discontent pull that direction these days? Well, let's talk about the Republicans again. And one reason is because our Republican Party here in America is very comfortable with the traditional language of populism, by which I mean the language of class anger. And they speak it naturally. It just comes to their lips. It is second nature for them to rail against our elite, the rigged system, and complain about the Hollywood millionaires, and the arrogant people that make our TV shows, and the haughty professors who indoctrinate our kids. I mean, by the way, I was here it was in St. Paul, just on a couple of miles away, where I saw with my own eyes Sarah Palin was introduced to a national audience, and immediately went on this, exactly what I'm describing, this kind of terror, standing up for ordinary Americans, right? Real Americans who inhabit the heartland. The Republicans deliberately mimic left-wing protest movements from days of yore. I mean, if you think about it, that's what the Tea Party movement was. It was a fake, hard times protest movement. I mean, it was a replica. Glenn Beck deliberately mimicked Martin Luther King's March on Washington. Paul Ryan once wrote an article, who this is, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, once before he was that, he wrote an article in Forbes magazine called "Down with Big Business." and now comes Donald Trump. And I was at that Republican convention too, the one in Cleveland, and when he came out to give his speech, they called him America's blue-collar billionaire. And his speech was sort of the high point of his campaign. This was his great moment. Everything else at the convention last year was a botch. I mean, it was so screwed up. And but here comes Trump, and he actually had rehearsed his speech and tried hard. And okay, I'm not going to go into that now. Anyhow, he pledged himself to the working class voters left behind by our current recovery. And this is what he said. Now listen to this. "I have visited the laid-off factory workers and the communities crushed by our horrible and unfair trade deals." This next phrase is an obvious echo of Franklin Roosevelt. "These are the forgotten men and women of our country. People who work hard but no longer have a voice." And then Trump went on and tried to reverse the sort of classic liberal criticism of conservatives as always being pawns of the Koch brothers and big money. He said, "Big business, elite media, and major donors are lining up behind the campaign of my opponent because they know she will keep our rigged system in place." Rigged system, he stole that from Elizabeth Warren. Remember? He goes on, "They are throwing money at her," meaning Hillary, "because they have total control over every single thing she does. She is their puppet, and they pull the strings." Now, Donald Trump is a hypocrite and a vulgarian and a bigot. But when he said those things, the man connected emotionally. Okay? When he said that the system is rigged, it is, folks. He's right. When he pointed out that huge parts of our country have been deindustrialized, and that's a terrible thing, he's right. What drives me crazy is that those are the things that my side used to say. That's what people like me used to say. So where are the Democrats in all Look, folks, once upon a time, protecting the middle class society is what the Democratic Party was all about. This was their brand identity. They never shut up about it. I mean, that's who they were. And I sometimes think that you take some of these Democratic leaders of the past, you take Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Lyndon Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, and you put them in the present day, they would have taken one look at what Wall Street is doing to this country, what Wall Street is doing to the world, and they would have known exactly what to do. They would have swung directly into action. But our modern Democratic leaders falter. Yes, they know that inequality is terrible and it's out of control, and they cry big hot tears about it. But they can never find the conviction or the imagination to do what is necessary to put this thing into reverse. And instead they offer us up the same high-minded policy platitudes that they have been offering since the 1980s. And they tell us, oh, man, there's nothing anybody can do about technology. Technology, right? There's nothing anybody can do about globalization. Globalization, that is God himself reaching down the invisible hand and just rearranging human society. However, there's nothing we can do about that. And instead they promise us charter schools and job training, and yeah, they'll shovel out the student loans. And other than that, folks, they got nothing. The example I want to focus on tonight is also from 2009. The same year that the pundits were declaring the Republican Party dead. And the issue I want to talk about tonight is the Wall Street bailouts, which I think is the historical inflection point where our country and the entire world could have changed course. Okay? This was, if you ask me, the most important political moment of this stupid century that we're in. Okay? This was the turning point. And folks, we missed the turn. Remember what it was like, okay? Barack Obama had been elected president in a massive wave of hope and enthusiasm, and I was one of the hopeful ones. And he had the country at his back, and he had the world at his back. And then he proceeded to continue the bailout policies of George W. Bush, essentially unchanged. No big banks got put into receivership. And by the way, I don't know about Minneapolis, but in Kansas City, we put banks out of business all the time. It is an everyday occurrence, right? Oh, but not Citibank, not Wells Fargo. No. No big banks got put into receivership. No bailouts got unwound. No elite bankers got prosecuted. Hell, they didn't even get fired. Obama did fire the CEO of General Motors, but not the guys at Goldman. Oh, no. So what I'm saying is that Obama and his Democratic team refused to change course when every sign was telling them it was time to turn. When it would have been good for the country to be turned, healthy for us to make that turn, to be shed of Wall Street. When it was fully within the president's power at that moment to make the turn. It's not anymore, but it was back then because of the bailouts. When it would have been overwhelmingly popular with the American public to make that turn. And lastly, when the country fully expected him to make that turn. And when I say the country, I mean the Wall Street bankers themselves. There's this famous footage about almost exactly 8 years ago. Barack Obama called the Wall Street bankers down from New York for a meeting at the White House, and they come down. And there is footage of them it's a very famous meeting. There's footage of them coming into the meeting, and they are ashen-faced because they know what's about to happen to them, right? They're going to get spanked. They come out of the meeting a couple hours later, all smiles. Nothing happened. Everything's cool. Their cell phones kept going off. And this is my joke. So they come out of the meeting, nothing changed. In the immortal words of our Treasury Secretary at the time, we foamed the runways.